Does it not exist? My granny's spaniel lay outside the bedroom door all night when my uncle died and never moved till the funeral the next day. They definitely have a sixth sense. Dot in Northumberland. Thank you for texting, darling. See, when my granddad went, now, although he didn't die at home, all the clocks stopped in the house, which is weird. I mean, why would that happen? Is that just coincidence, I wonder? You do tend to wonder, don't you? What do you think about the sixth sense? ESP, premonitions, whatever you call it, it's what we've been investigating. And whether you're a believer or not, there's no denying there are some absolutely fascinating stories to tell. And 13 years ago, Annie Capp was just having a normal day, going about her business when something amazing happened to her. Annie, tell me what went on.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you. Yes, it was actually 7 years ago that it happened. I've been in the UK now 13, but basically a lot of people might dismiss what happened to me, and they might dismiss sixth senses, but I found out whilst researching and doing my investigation for my book, which is called Beyond Goodbye, that there's a lot of scientific evidence now and research into what happened. Basically, both between when she actually died and afterwards, I experienced things like somebody who might have had a near-death experience. My mom, from 5,000 miles away, actually connected with me in the sense that I experienced her dying symptoms of her last 20 minutes of life. And I was able to phone her. I had to stop working with a client and phone her. And as I spoke to her on the phone, my sister held the phone to her head. I could hear the same coughing and gagging that I was experiencing going on. And as she held the phone there, she died as I said goodbye.
That must have been quite an emotionally traumatic thing to go through.
It was actually emotionally. I'm not sure I'd call it traumatic. It was gripping. It was compelling, and I felt so connected to her, and basically privileged to have her. In a sense, she waited for me, and that's what the scientists are saying, is that a lot of things, like this clock stopping that you mentioned, and the pets, there's a lot of research into death and dying and phenomenology that happens around that, and this sort of thing happens all the time, that people get contacted or pets respond or electrical items stop working.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, my girlfriend Julie, I've spoken a lot about. She went about 3 to 4 years ago, and Derek came home after Julie had gone, and Derek had washed her afterwards, and the cupboard burst open when he walked into the room.
Wow.
Just little things, and straight, because he was, oh no, that's right, he was sitting on the bed crying, and all of a sudden the cupboard burst open, and the bag that Julie had in hospital spilled out.
Oh, wow.
And, you go, oh, all right, well, it just happened because the cupboard was full. But Derek said, no, it couldn't have happened like that.
No, I mean, I spoke to, trying to figure out what happened to me when my mom died and how she connected to me, and also the very odd things that started happening afterwards, because it acted as a catalyst. And this is what the scientists have found, is that when you have these sort of experiences, depending on the depth of them, that they trigger other things. But what I found is the sort of things you're talking about, they occur, and oftentimes are looked at like, oh, that couldn't have happened, and you just kind of put it out of your mind. But they are very significant, and they are real. And even the telepathy of the animals, like Malcolm was talking about, the information he was speaking of, the studies were done by a gentleman named Dr. Rupert Sheldrake. He told me that basically my mom has telepathy with me, and she connected with me. And another scientist, Dr. Fennick, he's a renowned neuropsychologist, or psychiatrist actually, he explained it as being what's called a deathbed coincidence. All those things that you're talking about, like the cupboards bursting open, are the deathbed coincidence happening by their consciousness of the dying person, actually.
So it'll be we're talking to Dr. Rupert Sheldrake in a minute.
Fantastic.
And I think he was fabulous. I mean, I had doubters in the office, obviously, and I hate doubters. It's like, shut up and go away. Carolyn is here with me. She's an author, Annie, and I just wonder, the phenomena of feathers when someone's ill. Because, again, my friend Julie had feathers around, which they say is from your guardian angel. What do you think about that? You wrote a book on angels.
Oh, it's funny. We were discussing this the other night at a reading group. Well, the thing is, my guardian angels, in my book, don't have feathery wings. It didn't ever sit right with me that this would be the case. But this is, this is where I'm coming from. This is just my conceptualization of angels, that it just didn't serve much of a purpose, so that they actually have two waterfalls flowing down their back, which sort of connect to this greater river of eternity. So I'm not sure about this.
I love that. I love that. I'm sorry, with all the horrors that go on in the world, those pictures of Syria that are in the press today are absolutely abhorrent. With all those horrors, I think we do need to believe in something. And why shouldn't we, Annie?
Well, I didn't believe in anything until it happened to me, and then after my mom died, don't laugh, Carolyn, I saw what I believe was an angel, and I had never believed in any of that. I was an atheist, agnostic, and then when my mom, died, she came back later and she touched me, you guys, don't laugh, and held me, and she left things for me. So this thing of these feathers appearing, well, in my case, my mother left her hairpins. She'd never been in this house over here because she'd never been able to travel over, and they started showing up for my husband and I to find. So I had witnesses to these odd occurrences. So I'm now a believer in all that stuff. I'm not sure about fairies, but I do believe in the angels.
Why shouldn't we believe in fairies? I was just showing Carolyn, I interviewed somebody else who'd written a book on angels last year, and she did me a picture of my guardian angel.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is
fabulous.
Isn't that fabulous?
Yeah.
I can't describe it apart from, he's very colourful and very butch. which is surprising when you look at me.
Interesting colours.
Yeah.
I didn't see feathers either, though. I saw energy, twinkly, sparkly energy, and I've painted some paintings of it, so I'm happy to share them with you, Carolyn.
Oh, yeah. No, but you should. Walter from Newcastle, he says as long as we deny our spiritual personality, we won't be able to access our other five senses fully, and I think he's hit it right on the nose.
Well, you know what you're going to hear from Sheldrake is so fantastic is he talks about the extended mind theory, and the Fenwick talks about consciousness loosening as we die, or if someone dies, apparently our consciousness is actually, they're trying to prove it right now, that it's outside the brain. That the mind resides outside the brain, and that we're all connected, and especially to those we're bonded to.
Well, just read
whether it be a pet or a human.
Just read the Celestine prophecy.
Yeah.
Can you communicate with spirits now?
I can now, even though I never believed they were real. They started talking to me after my mom died. I'm not a psychic. That's not my job. I'm a therapist. And of course, I had to question myself at that time because, that's kind of a strange thing to have happen. But now I believe, and there's no denying that there's other dimensions than this one that we physically live in.
I love talking to you.
Thank you.
Where are you?
I'm in Canterbury.
Oh, okay. Near Mum and Dad, actually. I used to work down there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it would be nice to talk to you again.
Love to.
I haven't got time to ask you the myriad of questions I would like to, but do you just finally, the thing that twins go through?
Yes.
Do you think that was the same with your mom?
I do, actually. I think that we had I'm the youngest of 7 children, and I was the last one at home with her during some very traumatic times when her and my father were divorcing, and I believe we had some kind of connection more than she had with her other children.
Right. Annie, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Give my regards to Canterbury.
Will do.
Beautiful city. Take care. Annie Capp, author of a book called Beyond Goodbye. And why shouldn't we believe in the kind of stuff that we're talking about this morning? It gives a bit of comfort. We're going to talk to the professor in a minute, who we were just talking about. Professor Sheldrake's on next. Okay. Let's continue our discussion about the sixth sense, which is a weird world for many people. I spoke to Annie Capp, who experienced her mum's death, and last week I chatted to Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, who's done extensive research into telepathy and premonition, and I asked him when I spoke to him how his interest in this field had developed.
Well, I was interested, even as a child, in homing pigeons and how they find their way home. And one reason I became a biologist was because I've always been fascinated with things we don't understand about animals. And in the late 1980s, I got interested in phenomena like the feeling of being stared at and telepathy in pets, particularly dogs and cats that know when their owners are coming home.
You mentioned that feeling that you get you're being stared at.
It does indeed seem to be real. It's not just coincidence. People can tell when they're being looked at from behind. So we do tests where half the time people are being looked at and half the time they're not. and they have to guess in each test whether they're being looked at or not. So if they were just guessing, it would be 50-50. In fact, it's about 60-40 in the looking tests. So it seems to be a real thing. In terms of the distance, people can tell when they're being looked at by through binoculars or telescopes, up to half a mile away.
In a book called The Celestine Prophecy, which you may or may not remember, there was a thing where the body has energy fields. Do you think that's because somebody's honing in on someone's energy field, so to speak?
Yes, I think it's to do when you look at something. I think your own field of attention stretches out, as it were, to touch what you're looking at, and I think that the person looked at can detect that, usually unconsciously. And I think the feeling of being stared at is a very basic thing. Animals have it too. I've done experiments with animals as well. And I think that its origins in evolutionary terms are with predator-prey relationships. If a prey animal could tell when a hidden predator was watching it, it would obviously escape better than one that couldn't tell.
My sceptical question for skeptics everywhere, Doctor, is telepathy is a real phenomenon that exists, in your opinion, where some people can sense what another is thinking. Isn't it just coincidence?
Skeptics often sound quite convincing and try to sound scientific, but science isn't about just putting forward guesswork like that. It's about doing the experiments, and the skeptics have done none.
Is there part of the brain, do you think, that deals with this kind of sixth sense? I mean, is it the third eye in the middle of your forehead?
Well, I think obviously the brain's involved in everything we say and do and think to some degree. But I think what's going on is there's a kind of field in and around the body, and that these things are picked up through more extended fields. I think our mind depends on fields extended throughout and beyond the body, not just the brain. So I work on what I call the mysteries of everyday life. Dogs that know when their owners are coming home, telephone telepathy, the sense of being stared at, things which most people have experienced, or at least many people have.
Premonitions, then, are they real?
Well, I think they are. The ones I've studied are mostly in animals. I've been tracking for the last 15 years animal responses to earthquakes and tsunamis. And before all the major recent earthquakes and tsunamis, animals have been getting sort of anxious, showing signs of fear or excitement, hours, sometimes days before the disaster strikes. So I'm pretty sure that premonitions are real, and that it's a basic part of animal nature. Humans have them not because we're special, but because we're animals.
Will you tell me about the study you did on breastfeeding?
Yes, many mothers claim that when they're breastfeeding their babies, they have a telepathic link and know when the baby needs them. I did a study with breastfeeding mothers in London. We monitored them over a 2-month period. Every time their milk let down when they were away from the baby, they couldn't hear their baby crying, they were miles away. That coincided remarkably well with the baby's distress. The odds against chance were 1 billion to 1. So I think that this telepathy between mother and baby is very basic and biological, and again, it would have a strong evolutionary basis.
You see, I think he is absolutely fascinating, as many other people do. Rupert Sheldrake, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, how do you feel after the last hour of Wireless, where you were sceptic before, and now maybe think there might just be more to this sixth sense stuff than meets the eye, or maybe you're still convinced it's mumbo-jumbo, like many do. Either way, there's no doubt that it takes all sorts, my dear. 2 minutes to 12. Carolyn Jess-Cooke is with me. Just briefly, Karen, why do you think we've let go of believing in it? And do you think we'd be a better bunch of people if we got it back?
I think it probably has to do with the kind of civilization or the world we're living in, with so much technology now, with such a visual culture, so material. I think, we don't necessarily need to rely on these such things anymore, really think about them that much. And yeah, I think it would be absolutely worthwhile in considering other possibilities other than just the realm we can see and feel and touch. We need to consider a sixth sense, if that's the term we want to devote to it, and other possibilities, and be much more open-minded.
I like the idea that the mind exists outside and connects.
Yeah,
and stuff.
Me too, absolutely. And I believe in that fully.
Because isn't it Carillion photography that can photograph your aura?
I think so. I mean, there's many different kind of belief systems that, out beyond religion and beyond spirituality that just invest in the idea of energy and connection, and I think it's absolutely true.